Hi friends, I'm Tammy K and welcome to my channel. Today is day number 5 of my Watercolor Beginners Series. If you haven't seen the other videos, definitely check out the link in the description and you can find them there. So today, we're first of all going to be doing some florals and I'll be showing you how we paint on the details to make them really pop and have the shadows. And then we're going to do a beach landscape scene that I took from a reference photo when I was visiting Hawaii recently. So we are going to be combining some of the skills we've learned in this series. So stay tuned, let's get started. So we're gonna start by doing some really loose florals today. I'm going to be using my filbert brush. I really love it with the rounded edge, but you can use whatever you want. So just thought it would be fun to kind of paint in some of the flower shapes that I usually like to do. We're going to move the brush around to create some nice petals that are varied. I like to flip the brush around so that I'm getting that nice rounded edge on the outside of the flower. You don't have to do that. That's just a preference on how I like to work. So I'm just taking little bits of paint here. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm doing really light, watery mixes, and I'm going to just do a larger bloom here. I'm just twisting and turning and maybe a side facing. I might dip a little bit more into the paint so it's a little bit darker in some spaces. And I say side facing because the petals are shorter here and you can see more from the perspective of the top petals here. And I'm leaving it open in this middle so that we can add in a nice center later. We'll do some details, we'll make them real pretty. And then I think I'm gonna do one with just some really quick, long, thin petals. So I'm just flipping my brush. I'm working fast. You can work slower if you need to, and that's totally fine. I like to work fast so that my brain just doesn't start nitpicking on all the things that I'm doing and start telling me that maybe my work isn't good. Honestly, it can be a real struggle because your brain likes to just really sabotage and get you in a space where you don't enjoy what you are painting. Let's do five petals here. And it can be a very lonely place in your brain. I'm just gonna do a side facing one here, just like that. And so we have to really, fight to make sure that our brain is sending the right messages to ourselves. So I'm gonna do kind of like a tulip right here. We're just doing a lot of loose florals, so we're doing a C-curve shape and another C-curve shape here. And we can connect those with stems later too. And just grab whatever colors you want to use. I think I'm going to switch out to a number 6 round. And I want to do just a little bit of a, kind of like a cone flower or kind of a daisy or something like that. So I'll just do the top right here. And then I'm rinsing my brush. And then we're going to add some of this purpley one. So I'm just going to create some long petals, a little bit of a thin part right there. And I'm not touching the middle right now because I don't want to, I'm gonna dip my brush to get some of the pigment off. I don't want that paint to run from the center. So if it happens, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. But that's just what I'm trying to do right now. And a little bit is mixed in, and that's all right. Let's do like a rose. So I'm a very small rose because I don't have a lot of space left. So I'm just going to do a C-curve shape here. And then I'm just going to add in these lovely C-curve shapes around, dip in the water, squeegee off the side just to remove some of that pigment. And so what we're doing is we're just trying to create these little petals that get thicker as we go out from the center. And sometimes they might get lighter too. Cleaning your brush, dabbing it, and then just allowing that color to spread. So this part, when I start doing flowers like this, I often will find myself feeling very nervous because I'm like, okay, this isn't looking like anything exciting yet. Is this gonna turn out well? Yes, my brain does it as well. Is this going to be pretty or not? Will these turn out? And I have to also remind myself that not only is this practice, but it shouldn't matter how it turns out because we're just experimenting and we're playing and we're supposed to be having a good time, okay? So I remind you of that. I remind myself of that. Just grabbing different colors and putting down brush strokes. So how are you feeling right now? I always like to check in with people and see if you are enjoying what you're painting. If you're liking this video, definitely give it a like, a thumbs up, and subscribe to my channel if you're interested in seeing more of what I like to create and paint with watercolor. I have so much fun on this channel, I really do, and I want to inspire people to paint carefree and to not be worried about the details, but just start putting brushstrokes on paper and allowing that paint to flow and, you know, finding it to be an experience that is relaxing and that's beautiful and that's going to rejuvenate you, okay? That's really important to me. So I hope that you can experience that on this channel and in this video today. I would like to do a few blue flowers, just some nice light blue paint here. Lots of water on my brush, and I'm going to do 3 petals here, maybe 4, and maybe just 3, a little bit of a side-facing situation. Not that we have to fill up all this space, but I would like to connect some things more with some stems as well. And it's just fun to see what we can create, you know? Enjoying that process and hopefully encouraging ourselves to continue. So, moving on from that, I'm just adding in the stems. I like to arc them a little bit so they're not just a stick straight stem. And then I want to start adding in some pretty, you know, leaves and that kind of thing. So I'm just going to dip into there. I want to have less paint on my brush for right now. And then we can just do some little green marks, filling this in. So I wanted to share with you how I like to do my details. And that's what makes me really excited. So we can do some cool greenery just using the belly of the brush and pressing down. And then we can fill that in with some stems as well later on, just adding in different variations of green. And see how simple this is. This is nothing that is hard to do, but they're just pretty little marks. And I think they're nice because they're not intimidating. That's what I think. So just little bits of marks here and then some lighter ones. And I'm going to actually take my dagger brush, use a number 2 round or number 1, something that is really light, that's really pointed and thin. And then you can start taking your marks up another level by adding in some stems and then really making these look like they are leaves that are all bunched together on a little stem. And I just think that the thin mark really makes it pretty and delicate, dainty, all those things, versus a thicker mark. And if you just have a thicker brush, you can use that too. There's no problem in that. And sometimes with this, I just like to make some interesting little squiggly marks. I'm just doing a stem. I'm not really paying attention to, you know, trying to make it look like a leaf, and your eye fills in those details. We could even do some dry brushing here as my paint is starting to run out. So now we're going to do some of the details on these flowers. We're ready for it. So I've got that number 6 round again. We're gonna start with some stippling, and I've got some black paint here. I'm just gonna go really dark because I want this to stand out immediately. So I'm going to do a little stippling, which we did learn on one of our videos, and, you know, layering texture. And we're going to make these tiny little dots. And then I'm going to take what I call a liner brush. It's really thin. And I'm going to try to grab some of these lines from the center and just move them outward just to make a really cute, beautiful center. Okay, and then we're gonna leave these just kind of like that because this is the way that the flower is positioned. we are not able to see inside the flower completely. And so we only see this part here. All right, so we're going to now let's do some green stippling. Green stippling can be fun. And I'm gonna do that over here. Just a little bit of green and just gonna spread it out right there. And I don't think I'm not going to make lines on that one. I'm gonna darken up this part too. And I have much thicker paint right now than when I first started. I'm gonna actually start adding in some of the details. Now, some of these are wet. What we're wanting to do is just create some dimension and some shadow on those leaves and the flowers. And it's going to give that beautiful dimension that your painting needs to really stand out and to look like it is more three-dimensional. All right, I have some brown here and I'm doing that same. I'm gonna make a kind of a solid center and then add just a little bit of stippling on the outside. Just really cute, delicate marks. So they're all a little bit different so far. All right, let's add a little bit more, not this color. Let's add maybe a little bit more brown on our brush and start adding in just a little bit of marks so that we can, have a little difference between the medium caramely color and even have just a little bit of bumpiness here. And then having that nice dark color there on the outside. Okay, and for this one, I'm just gonna do this reddish brown color. It looks kind of nice. Okay, I rinse my brush here. And a little bit of dark brown for this one here, just a little bit of a circle for these guys as well. I like to try to, add a variety of colors so that not all the flowers have, the same look in the center. Okay, so now we're gonna add in some more of those fine details. So we're using more paint and less water, more saturation here, and I'm just going to do some little scratchy marks and press down. And sometimes you just want to do a few little marks, and sometimes you want to paint thickly as well. What I'm trying to do is just to create some dimension without making everything look really matchy-matchy. And sometimes I want to just blend some of those lines in, and sometimes I want to leave them because that's the look that I'm going for. So it really depends on what I'm wanting to accomplish. So I'm gonna grab some of this yellow on here. And I think for this one, I go a little thin and then press down. See if this will show up. Thin, press down, thin, press down, thin, press down. Like that. Grab some more of that paint. So I'm liking that, just a little thin mark and then press down. And you're utilizing, again, the shape of the brush, which is really pretty, and it's easier, less work for you if you're just using what you already have. You're not having to reinvent the wheel and all that stuff. Okay. Lovely. All right. Okay, well, I'm curious right now, what is your favorite flower? Definitely comment below if you have a favorite one, or if there's some flowers you would like to see me paint in the future. I've always got an ongoing list, and I'm always super happy to try to accommodate any suggestions people have. It really helps me to know what you guys like to see. And, often I'll find, there's some suggestions of things I've never heard of, and I have to look it up. I have to Google it, and it gives me a load of ideas, which is really nice. So there I just did some random marks on here, some thin and thick. That's kind of the idea I've been going for, thin and thick. Here, I'm just going to be a little random. And I do want to make sure this guy has some pizzazz, but I don't want to steal the show, and then it's so small that I could easily cover up everything if I do too many brush strokes, and then what's the point of the bottom layer? So there you go, a little bit extra here for some dimension. Okay, and then we've got some pink on my palette. Let's add that back on there. Okay, I'm going to use this pink in, let's say, with the rose probably, And with the rose, and that's some purple in there too, a little purple, a little pink, add some different things on your palette, and then you can just kind of dip in one to the other and get fun variations. So with my rose, I want to create some shadows. So I'm just going to kind of go around and just sort of paint those in at this point. And then I'm going to rinse my brush, dab it, and just blend in a few of those lines so they're just not so harsh. And a little bit softer and a little bit more diffused. It's kind of the look I'm going for, but you don't have to blend them. You can leave them how you want. If you want to leave them the way they are, that's fine. I always like to say that, it's totally up to you, what you're looking for, what makes you happy. And painting should make you happy. I'm just gonna do, these are so small, so I don't tend to belabor the details as much. Just kind of give them their nice coating and, moving on. A little brown in here. A little brown for a nice darker, almost burgundy color. And I'm just gonna use it for here. Adding some lines, sometimes a little bit up top, a little bit on the bottom, and just mixing it up just a tad. I think I want to add some orange on my palette here, and maybe do like a kind of a dirty orange color. So adding some brown in there, and lots of water. My water is dirty too, so that kind of adds to it. All right, so this guy here, I just feel like going a little simple with some of these. And that's all you have to do, just a little bit of pizzazz. And then this one, just a little bit. We're looking for shadows. We're looking for, sometimes we're gonna do, more details and lines, and sometimes we just want a little variation from what it looks like. And then you can, and sometimes I'll even add in 3 colors. For example, this one, I can go darker, add some more brown, and then I could just have, some tiny lines inside of that. So we have a lot more dimension happening, and I like that idea as well. Sometimes I'll do that, and just depending on how much time I have to paint my flowers. So we have a few guys left. We are working on, this is a really beautiful yellow, cadmium yellow, and just adding some tiny details on that one. I don't want to forget about the black in the center of these little guys. So I'm just going to add that in now. And, a lot of dimension, that when you have yellow flowers, it's hard to do that dimension. So we're just kind of leaving that guy here, leaving them as they are. Maybe I'll add some more later. We'll see. Okay, so now I might do some little like scratchy marks here. And I'm working kind of fast because, like I've said before, I don't want to overthink it. This part, honestly, I'll be honest with you guys, tends to scare me. And I think, oh man, especially when you start, it's like, I don't want to mess this up. But then you have to remind yourself, this is practice, it's fine. It's going to be okay. I'm going to switch to my filbert here. And I think I'm going to utilize this lovely mix here. It has some purple, some brown in it. Let's add a little bit more of that reddish purple. It's so pretty. And I'm just going to just kind of do a few of these lines here really fast. Oh, look at how cute that is. This filbert is my friend, like my buddy, my best bud when it comes to flowers. I just absolutely love it. I've been using it for maybe half a year, and it's like, where were you my whole life? And look at how cute you can get your petals to be with this shape. Okay, so everything is pretty dry here. This guy, I want to go back in. I'm always doing this. Like, let's see, what else can we do? I just wanted to add a little bit of bright yellow over the top. I feel like he's a little darker, brown, a little bit more saturated than I was hoping for. So there we go. And of course, a little bit more green for some of our leaves. That's a lot of liquid. That's okay. just making sure that everyone's looking cute and fancy tonight. All right, let's go ahead and paint our landscape next. So I have a beach scene that I'm going to recreate from my recent trip to Oahu, to Hawaii. And we're just going to create this really easy and loose shoreline. And I got to paint this while I was sitting on the beach, which was such a blessing and so relaxing and so much fun. So I'm excited to show this to you today. So we have some hills and I have my shoreline, and I want to reserve some white of the paper because I want to have like the billowy frothiness here. Instead of adding in like some white, which I might do with gouache or acrylic sometime, I like to sometimes leave it with the white of the paper, and that just works for me. So we're doing some like mountainy hills here. So these are going downwards this way, and then some bigger ones, and then in the background. Okay, so, and then we're gonna have some palm trees here. So I'm just gonna do really quickly some palm trees, and you're gonna have your branches, and this is gonna be that big focal point here. That's more in the foreground instead of the background, which I think will look good. Having something larger, like up close. Okay, so now that we have our basic sketch, we're gonna start painting. I'm gonna take this brush, which is a flat wash, and this one as well. This is a 3/4 inch wash. I'm not sure about this one. It doesn't have a number. We're gonna start with this so we can move quickly to get a lot of things happening. So I'm going to grab blue, and I don't have a lot of space on here. We're just gonna mix it right here. And I'm not worried if we get a lot of things happening, like different mixtures of color. So I'm dry brushing right now, basically. And that's one of the techniques we were learning in our videos. I'm dry brushing, and I'm going to clean this off and add more water just to spread out some of that paint. You know, when you're looking at your sky, sometimes you're just seeing a lot of streakiness, and that's the thing I'd like to create today with this. So when we're dry brushing, we're going to have a lot of white space that is showing in the painting, and our brush was so dry, so it kind of skipped over some of the sections. And I just think that that's a really pretty look, and that gives us the illusion of clouds. So I'm just adding in some blue back over, cleaning my brush, and then just starting to spread. Now that I added a lot of that paint, I want to make sure that I can spread a little bit more of it around, and just using the brush on the side or this way can help with that. All right, a little bit more water. Now I do like that painterly look, lots of brush strokes seen, so you're not gonna see me doing a lot of kind of covering things up, blending things, that kind of thing. So I've got a nice blue here. I'm thinking about probably adding in just this little bit of teal, and I don't want the water to be like really intensely teal, so I just wanted to just kind of create my own mix here. All right, so I'm just taking the flat side, the broad side of the brush, and we're just going to kind of skid around here, leaving some white space, adding in some dry brush texture, and just being mindful of where we have left our marks here, our pencil marks, to keep, you know, reserve the whites of the paper. Now grab some water, and you can start to, there's a really dry brush thing happening, you can hear it, but being able to grab some of that paint down and spread it out a little bit. I'm just going really lightly here, and we will add in more layers too, but this is that first part. We can always add in some water. That's going to give us a few blooms. I'm just dropping it in, which is where the water is going to, see it's starting to spread some of the paint, and it kind of looks like ocean waves popping up. But then you have to be mindful of not painting over that when you do your second layer if you want the texture. I love the texture. So we're gonna start mixing up our sandy color. I might want some of this later, but I'd like to do a lighter shade right now. So I'm just gonna grab some water and make it a little bit thicker. you know, sand comes in so many colors, and we're just going to go along that space that we left for our white space, right where that pencil mark is. And we are just going to paint in, and it's okay if you get some dry brush effect. In fact, I love that. And I'm holding the flat side here, but just at an angle. And I'm just kind of dragging it along and making some cool marks. So that's how I'm feeling like painting this today. And you might add in some extra paint there, you know, so it can spread. If you get some blooms with this too, great. I'm all for blooms. I'm just gonna paint all around here where the tree trunks will be so that we don't have white space under that later. Because once I put in my tree trunks, you know, we're gonna need some sand there, and it's a lot easier to paint the sand now than paint it later in between everything, if that makes sense. All right, so that's pretty good. I'm gonna take a little bit more of this and just kind of add it in, almost like darker shadow sides. And we'll just see how that dries. As I'm adding it in right now, it's this wet on wet technique, and it's gonna spread really nicely. It won't give these hard edges, but it's gonna be a nice kind of a shadow there. And often when you go to the beach, you will see the sand is wet, you know, as it's receding, this part of the sand that's been with the water, under the water, is gonna be darker and also shiny, which I can't make it shiny, but I can make it appear darker. Okay, so now this is dry. We're gonna work on our mountains. So I've got a variety of green here. This is really intense. I'm not gonna use it like that. To desaturate, you can grab some red to your green because we want to make them a little bit. Ooh, that is a lot. So you know what? That happens. I have a big brush. Sometimes it's hard to grab correctly. Okay, so that's kind of a fun, getting to be a fun color. We've darkened it up a bit, and I'm gonna add some more water. So now I'm going to just, again, this flat side here, I like angular brush strokes. So I'm just going to put this in, not painting over the water if I can help it. I know we'll have palm branches here, so I'm not too worried about that area. And I'm just gonna dragging it so that's a little bit bumpy. And we are going to add in, we're gonna do some glazing, adding in some layers from here to here so we can differentiate between one mountain and the other. And we'll just use either a higher concentration of paint and less water, or maybe a different color of green. We'll see. Haven't quite decided yet. So just adding that in, painting that up. Great. And then here I'm gonna add a little bit of that blue-green just for a different shade of green. And maybe that is a mountain that is in the background more. So already that looks a lot different than the other ones. So we don't really have to worry too much about changing up the shadows and stuff. What I could do is use this. So we're gonna assume that, you know, if the light is coming from a certain direction, then you're gonna have some shadow parts even on the mountains. And so we could say that the light is coming from here, and then this might be lighter. We can actually clean our brush, dab it, and lift some of the paint right here to create a little bit of a highlight. And that can also help differentiate our edges from one mountain to the next. And this one too. Let's do a little bit of that. And that can be a pretty neat effect. All right. So our water has billowed up here. We have a lot of expression. I actually think I'm gonna leave it. I'm loving the texture, and I don't want to ruin that. I'm gonna spread this out a little bit. And we'll let our mountains dry, and we'll just kind of add in some texture and detail afterwards. So now it's time to put in our palm trees, and I'm going to switch to this smaller flat wash brush, and I'm going to use brown, dark brown for the palm trees. So we'll mix some of that up here. And sometimes I want to go more of a thin paint and sometimes more thicker. We're just going to make these little dab motions because I want these palm trees just to be a little bit bumpy and not perfectly straight. There's a few up here too. And we're just going to have a few guys here on the beach as a nice little focal point on the side. Whenever I make the landscape, I try to find a way to add in something close up that's going to be bigger, that's going to take up part of, you know, that front, the side, or even the middle, just because it's going to give something really cool in the foreground, because we already have all this stuff in the background. All right, so for now, I'm going to leave it like that. I'm going to grab my sap green color, which I love for most things. And we're going to add a little bit of this, that blue-green in there, a little bit more water. And we're going to start adding in some, let's see, this is dry, pretty dry, some palm tree branches. So I'm just doing that same method that I was doing before with the trunks. This is wet, so we're going to start more over here, and this might spread. That's okay. We're just not going to worry too much about all the things, but just have a lot of fun. And if things spread, they spread. And you can make your branches a little bit crooked, a little bit arcing if you want to. And we're going to fill in all those spaces with some of what I call leaves. And I've always wondered, you know, we have fronds, the branches, but what would the specific little kind of leaves that come off the branches be called? Because that whole unit, as far as I know, are fronds. So anyway, if you know, let me know in comments. I'm really curious. Also, let me know in comments what you're enjoying most right now. Have you liked the flowers more or the landscape? And make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'm so grateful to all of you guys that are here. I appreciate your support on this channel. We try to have so much fun, and I thank you guys. You guys leave such beautiful comments that are encouraging and welcoming, and I'm just really glad you're here. So I hope that you can find this to be a stress-free experience when you paint with me. Also, I'm going to do little marks here with this flat part of my brush, maybe even just the tip of it, so that I can get just some little tiny marks for the, I'm going to call them leaves. If anyone has another idea, let me know. Until then, leaves. And just making some jagged marks. I have in the past done a lot of palm trees, and I've used a variety of types of brushes, and this is by far my favorite so far. I feel like it looks the most natural and painterly as well, because you've just got some really fun angular brush strokes. Sometimes I've taken a liner brush, which is really thin. We use that for our flowers, and I've just like literally gone and done every single leaf, which takes so long, but I feel like it's so tight and constrained. So it's not my favorite method for doing palm trees. And you have to remember too, you know, if you're doing a bunch of palm trees, at the end of it, once you have all of them just compiled together, you really don't need a whole lot of detail, because it's this one mass of green. So what I think is really important is adding in variations of color, your lights and your darks, so that you can show depth and dimension with your trees. I think that's really a key for them looking quite realistic and beautiful. So anyway, all right, a little bit more there. And if we need to add in more palm tree, I always want to say stems because I'm used to doing flowers, but trunks, we could do that. I could do another one right here. A little bit smaller in the distance. Maybe there's another one over there. For now, I want to add in some shadows. Let's do a little bit of shadow up here, and I'm going to take some brown and add it to my yellow. And I just want to, with really the corner of this brush, just kind of do some scratchy marks. Remember I was saying that, you know, the sand is wetter here, and so you can do it how you want. You don't really have to be this detailed. I just find it to be kind of fun, and I'm going to take some fresh water too and spread this out. Dab my brush. If you haven't noticed, I'll rinse my brush and then dab it on the paper towel, and that is just a lifesaver for water control, so you're not getting too much water on your paper and just flooding it, which can be very easy to do. So I'm just blending out the edges. Okay, and so we'll come back for some shadow stuff later once this is dry. Let's go ahead and fix the situation over here. So I literally have all these cool marks because this is a cotton paper, and so the way that the water is reacting with the color, it's making some beautiful texture. So I don't feel like I have to do a lot here for texture, but I do want to darken up, you know, this side. I'm gonna actually add some brown to this because again, this green is still really intense. And so all I have to do is, again, that corner, I use that corner a lot. And just making some kind of some scratchy marks here for the texture in this mountain. These aren't big mountains, you know, they're kind of like hills. But anyway, they're still valuable and necessary, all things. We might be able to do a few more lines here too. And don't overthink it too much. One thing to just keep in mind though, is that when you have these mountains, everything is going at a slope, at a slant. And if you want to create that feeling of movement going down, you're gonna do these diagonal brush strokes, and that's gonna show the texture of the mountain. You're gonna see the different crevices, but things are always moving, usually at a slant, going downhill. Okay, I want to darken up this right here without losing our blooms. I don't want to lose our blooms. They're very beautiful, but this right here just got a little bit watered down for me. So I'm just quickly, you know, dabbing some areas just to darken up a little bit. And, you know, I don't want to, you know, ruin what I have. I like what's going on here so far. A little bit of dry brushing, taking some clean water, dabbing my brush, and at this point, I do want to soften these marks. So if you're looking out in the ocean, you're gonna see all kinds of colors, and it's based on, you know, how the sun is reflecting on the water. The water itself isn't beautifully, you know, colored and aqua. Depends on what's happening under the water, you know, what's the color in the shoreline and the color of the sand. And often you can see dark spots where you can see the reef. So, you know, that's why we're adding in different colors. So it's not just going to be flat and, you know, a certain way. So this is drying pretty fast today. It's pretty dry today for me here. I'm going to add some brown. It was so much brown. So let's add some more purple in. And I want to do some shadows that are purpley. I think that'll be kind of fun. I do also have some darker blue. Shadows are not necessarily gray and blah, and you can make them what you want. So I want to do some shadow sides here. Sorry, that was my chair being all loud and squeaky. And just this flat part of the brush, dragging it, and then, you know, maybe a little bit more because of where the palm trees are, you know, full of their fronds and everything. And I'm not being, you know, really particular about this because no one's really going to look at that and, you know, count, are there enough shadows? And if you don't have enough shadows, there's some missing, then maybe people will, but they're probably not going to be looking for, does it have enough branches represented, you know, but we're having those basic shapes on there. And everybody's kind of represented here today with their shadows, okay? So that's simple, easy peasy. I do want to do a darker green for some shadowed parts in the tree. We're almost done with this painting. I'm so glad that you're here. This is a really dark green. I'm going to actually let this dry and then I'll be right back. So one thing you want to make sure you do is let everything dry really well, or else you're gonna have an issue with the nice marks that you're putting in just absorbing into the paint that was already there. And I want to see some brush strokes here. I want to see some dark marks stand out. And so that was my intention, to just dry it, because I could tell that, you know, we were not going to get these defined marks. So, you know, we've already painstakingly tried to add in all of our little leaves and everything, and I'm just simply adding in some dark, especially towards the bottom where the light is not going to shine on these trees. And I'm not really going to do the shadow parts out on the tips of the leaves. Those are going to be in light. We just wanted a little bit of shadow to show that dimension. And I'm kind of covering in the space where it looked a little bit white because we have so many trees. We're not going to see really any white through there. Okay, I think the last thing, I always have a last thing, dab my brush, is just add a little extra dark on my trunks. Maybe it'll be noticeable, maybe not. I like to add a couple layers. I like to do glazing, And that's just gonna give more of the 3D look for us. And let's darken up our shadows a little bit more, adding some black to that purple color and just over the top. It is still wet, that's okay. I'm just adding a few marks. And if you wanted to have a lot of fun, you could do some splatter on the beach, and that could be really great. Let's actually go ahead and do that. So I have a really old bristly brush that I'm using today, and we are going to cover up what we can, for the most part, of the white space. And we're going to dip in water, make it wet, and then we'll just grab some of this with a little bit of brown. It's a nice watery paint. And I don't want to have too much happening, but we're gonna spritz. We're just going to grab the bristles and go like that, okay? So we're just gonna spritz a little bit on our sand. We got a big one there, and that happens sometimes, that's okay. It's a little bit of marks on our sand for some little stones or debris, whatever floated in from the ocean. So if you have a situation like this happening, you can sometimes remove that. Just take a clean brush with some clean water, lift it, and no one's gonna cry because you did this, because you did a splatter. And look at that, it's lifting so well. So I just continue to clean brush, dab it, and then scrub. And you know what? You really can't tell it's there. And that is your landscape painting with some of the techniques we learned this week. Well, friends, that concludes our 5-day watercolor beginner series. I hope you've learned a lot of things. Let me know in comments what was the most meaningful thing that we talked about this week. Also, I teach watercolor on Patreon. The link is in the description. There is a free 7-day trial that's available, and you can try risk-free for my bonus content. I do art prints and live stream, and also exclusive tutorials not seen anywhere else, and more. So check that out if you are interested. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate every one of you, and I will see you guys on the next video.